Welcome to Tell Me Your Story, New Paradigms for a New World. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is, as I say every program, a pleasure to come your way to bring you these programs, these conversations with our very special guests throughout the days, the weeks, the months. We are available to you, as it were, on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and then 9 a.m. on Wednesdays for that's where we have our special edition. And we also stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. We hope that you will click on the click to listen. And then we podcast on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, many other locations. And we are also on YouTube, where you can watch these interviews. I hope that you'll select notification at least so that you will be notified of the next conversation that we are going to have, and you'll be able to listen to that and learn something not only about our guest, but about the work that they are doing and a whole lot more, I'm sure. So we certainly hope that you will avail yourselves. With that being said, a reminder that if you'd like to support the work that we are doing, we would greatly appreciate that. We have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. And we certainly hope that you can. And if you can, when you go to PayPal, what you're going to do is you're going to put in an email address to whom to send the contribution, the support. And that email address is richard@richarddugan.com. That's richard@richarddugan.com. So please, whatever you're able to do. And if you're not able to, we'll take energetic support. We're not picky in that regard. We can use, as all people are, we can use all the help we can get, as it were. Also participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s, where we ask you to go within and listen to that still small voice and follow the promptings. But you'll also be enlightened and educated and a lot of other good things. We certainly hope that you will participate in that particular event that's been going on, guess what, since the year of Perfect Vision 2020. Today's guest, I'm looking forward to talking with our guest today, who comes to us via, well, Central America. At least if my geography is correct, I think it's still Central America. And it is Jonathan England. And there's an interesting twist. But we're going to talk today about the 5-step roadmap to enlightenment, prosperity, and your life's purpose. And we are very grateful. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today, Jonathan. It's nice to have you with us.
Yeah, thank you for having me on, Richard.
These 5 steps, it's interesting. Over the years, I have read a number of books that that's kind of how they start out. It's 5 steps, 7 steps, 12 steps, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But it does seem to help people in that regard to have those steps, even if you're in the 12-step program. Talk to us about why only 5? I mean, as I said, there are others that have a whole lot more steps, and obviously you've managed to codify it down to 5.
I mean, I'm sure there is a possibility that you could, break it down infinitely, as like a rainbow has, I don't even know how many primary colors, but whatever the primary colors are, but there's actually an infinite amount of colors on the rainbow. So these are like the primary colors. The 5 steps are like the primary colors of, so they're 5, it's 5 ways to perceive reality. They're 5 perceptions, 5 states of conscious awareness. Now, the truth is we're all in level 5 all the time, but what you believe to be true is true for you, even if it's nonsense. So you can live inside of a lie and it make it more real than real, which that's what most of everyone is doing. And the 5 steps, it's just we all go through these, that all of humanity goes through these, because we're on a 18-inch journey from the head to the heart, from the mind through the emotions to the heart. And this is that journey to the heart. Well, it's actually the journey to the heart, and then back from the perspective. So you can where you'll connect. It's a journey from the head to the heart, and then it connects the head and the heart together. So then you can actually bring heaven to earth, be here in form, but bring formless love to the form.
You know, your mission is similar to ours. I want to change the world. Now, I know that's a big bite to take. I was told that as a kid, but it can be done, but it has to start with me. And you are about your mission, for example, is creating a world of abundance for all by taking 100% responsibility for our thoughts, feelings, actions, and reality while working in harmony with nature and each other. There's a phrase I use quite often. I'd love for you to dovetail off of this. Nature is our greatest teacher. Would you agree?
Yeah, it's our greatest teacher in the physical form, how the physical actually works in divine order, the divine design. So we can know a lot about how we're actually meant to function by watching nature. But if we go into like our art, because we've artificially created a lot of stuff. Artificial just means man-made. And then we create this, and then we start reflecting back to our own creation. But our own creation could have been created out of a lie. Like I said earlier, what you believe to be true is true for you, even if it's BS. And so people talk about my truth. It's great that you have your truth. Don't let your truth have you, because your truth might actually be a lie. So there's the truth that sets you free. Your truth will imprison you if it's a lie. But if your truth is the truth, then you're set free. So nature, it hasn't shifted to any false perspectives. It didn't alter itself. It's like an apple tree just makes apples. It doesn't look over at a pear tree and be like, well, everybody's eating the pears right now, so I feel like I'm not worthy unless I make pears. So I'm going to stop making apples and I'm going to start making pears. It doesn't do that. The apple tree just continues according to its divine design. So it's really great to look at nature to really start to see where we've artificially started adjusting ourselves to something that we're not. And our core message here is EarthWaking is your only job for being alive is to be you. The only way you can possibly fail is by trying to be something that you're not. Your difference is the only thing that can make a difference.
You are down in Costa Rica with this particular village that you just mentioned, the Earthshaker village, right?
EarthWaking, like wake the world up.
EarthWaking. Okay, because I'm reading here Earthshaker, but obviously that's a misprint. That's okay. But let's talk a little bit about that. Now, if we create self-sustaining villages, as you have done, does that mean literally self-sustaining? We don't need any outside support from, shall we say, the modern world, in that we're able to generate the electricity or the power that we need, if indeed we even need it, because 150 to 200 years ago, there was no electricity. We had no lights. We were using candles or fireplaces and so forth, which wasn't necessarily a bad thing. I like the ambiance that it creates myself. How self-sustaining is this village?
Yeah, so we've got our own food, water, shelter, energy, community, but it's all built around a purpose. What you were just commenting on there, like a couple hundred years ago, there's a lot of stuff that we didn't have, and we were functioning fine, actually functioning better than society is these days. But yeah, here specifically at this village, basically everything is on solar power. We've got our own water. You know, there's food everywhere. It's like just a food jungle. But I'm in Costa Rica, so it's really easy to have food everywhere here. It's really easy to have fresh, clean water here. But yeah, it's where we're no longer dependent upon the outside world. Now, it's okay to have things. Don't let things have you. Currently, we'll still like I'm using the internet right now. That's obviously that's not our own source. Like we're not, that's not our thing. So I'm tapped into, but if there were ever a need to shut the ark doors, so to speak, we're perfectly fine. We're in heaven. There's no lack. We have abundance. It's just now we're cut off from the outside world. If and when the craziness goes on out there. but
Yeah.
that's really none of my business. My business is what's going on in here. Get so internally, and then what this village is a reflection of what's going on in me. I've got it right in here, and then our whole community, we have it right on the inside, and then we have a whole village that it's in peace, and we're standing in peace and abundance internally and externally. But outside this village, there's a lot of, in the whole world, there's a lot of discord going on, a lot of disconnection because people are in discord, disconnected from themselves. And so the world is just a perfect reflection of what's going on the inside of each of us.
Absolutely. I understand exactly what you're saying, and it makes perfect sense in that regard to start looking at what is going on. I remember that I was talking with someone who said when there are hurricanes or earthquakes or even wildfires, what have you, instead of worry, especially if it's not in your area, which, hopefully that is the case. Not that we wish any ill will on anyone, but it was said, when you see or hear about those kinds of things happening, take a look at what's going on inside of you. Not that you created it. Don't get me wrong, she says. Excuse me. But take a look at what, shall we, and I'll use your word, discord, is going on within you. Where is the turmoil? Where is the upset? Where is the hurricane, if you will, or where's the earthquake? I want to get back to what you said about perception. And a matter of fact, this is now the second time within about 2 weeks that I have interviewed someone who has talked about my truth, the truth, and the reality, shall we say. Now, I loved this that someone said. They said there are no absolute truths. And the response by one of the participants of this event said, well, wait a minute, could you stop just a moment? You're saying there are no absolute truths. But by saying there are no absolute truths, you're basically saying there is at least one absolute truth.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Now, this aspect of perception is information in our heads that has been filtered through all of our personal experiences, all the way from the time we came into this world, right?
Yep.
So I have to wonder how, up until now, it seems, we've been able to come to some kind of consensus over the decades, over the centuries, in certain areas. Or is it less consensus and more you've got one individual or a group, a small group? I mean, we hear about, for example, the conspiracy theorists talk about the Illuminati and the Trilateral Commission and the Council on Foreign Relations or Foreign Wars or whatever that are running the show, the global show. And I'm just going, well, if that's the case and they're the ones calling the shot, I don't have free will, because that's what you're implying, that I'm just being pulled along like a puppet. And I just find that hard to swallow. Do you think that from what you've experienced, and we're going to get into that as well, that there is something different going on now than has been going on? Or is this the same old that we keep repeating? We're not, as they say, we're not learning from history.
So we're coming to the end of the illusion of time. And I say we, as in anyone who's hearing my voice right now, that's where you are. There's infinite realities and infinite way. Like, it's kind of like if you're listening to the radio and you hear a song and you keep hearing these songs on the station, and at some point you're like, these are all country songs. I must be listening to a country station, but I would really like to listen to some rock and roll. Okay, well, what do? You change the dial, you change to a new frequency, and then voila, now there's rock and roll playing, and all these songs are rock and roll. Oh, I'm on a rock and roll station. But did you just create the songs whenever you changed the station? They were already there. So I always say we manifest our reality with our subconscious belief systems. Manifest doesn't mean to create, it means to make obvious what is already there. What's wrong is always available, so is what's right. We choose what to focus on. And you're focusing by your frequency, what you're actually tuning to. So you can tune into any reality that you want. Now, back to one of the things that we're talking about was the truth. Like, so love is the truth. That's the truth. Anything other than love is an illusion. And you can make that illusion more real than real. So, but what you believe to be true is true for you. So it is you can live inside of suffering and evil and, fear and all this stuff, and it becomes more real than real. It's not, it doesn't exist. Like darkness, literally the definition of darkness is the absence of light.
Mm-hmm.
It's not a thing. It's nothing. It's just the absence of something. So like fear is just the absence of love. It's not a thing. Like lies are just the absence of truth. Lies aren't a thing. They don't exist. There's nothing. It's the absence of something. Now that the absence of love can't possibly exist because there's no spot that love is not, except for in your own perception. You can block it. You can block your experience of it by what you've made something mean. And the only thing anything ever means is love, but we shift our perspective of when we place ourselves as judge of the scenarios and the circumstances, because every moment is a gift. Is even the moments that you like, but especially the moments that you don't like. And back to what you were talking about a moment ago, when a hurricane shows up, notice what's going on inside of you. Why is there a hurricane in your reality? Because there's a hurricane without, because there's a hurricane within. And that hurricane without is there to help you face what's going on inside of you, if you'll do it. If you don't, if you just numb yourself off to it, wall off to it, or react to it, then you're not taking responsibility for the feeling that was going on inside of you. And what it was bubbling to the surface because it appears without, though it is within. So this world is just your mirror. You don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So when it shows up in the mirror, you can say, oh, okay, that's in me. The reason that's out there is because it's in me. And let me find in me what that is. And if what you're seeing out there in the world is something other than peace, love, and joy, something other than love, that means you've artificially created something. You've manufactured some sort of story, and now your story is showing up on the big screen. So, and that's what I meant by taking 100% responsibility for your thoughts, your feelings, your emotions, and your reality.
We're talking with Jonathan England. He has a book that's free, from what I understand. It's called "If I Die Before I Wake." Sounds like a little quote from a little prayer that little kids would say before they went to bed. I pray my soul you'll take, something along those lines. But we're talking to Jonathan England here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it's really a pleasure to have Jonathan England all the way from Costa Rica talking to us. Why Costa Rica, Jonathan?
So in my book, it's "If I Die Before I Wake." Obviously, it's not talking about if you die in your sleep. Well, I guess that's may or may not be obvious to people, but it's not about talking about dying in your sleep. You woke up this morning. There's another awakening that occurs. This world, this life is just a dream, and so you awaken from the dream. But in the book, it talks about these 5 levels of consciousness, or 5 states of conscious orientation, 5 ways to perceive reality. And so in that journey through the 5 levels, the 5th level is this surrender state. It's the "not my will but thine be done." Actually, let me go over them real quick because I got to create a context for the question that you just asked. I could answer it, but it wouldn't really serve the audience if I didn't answer it without this context. Why Costa Rica? So level 1 is called disoriented, where you're just like a pinball getting bounced around. It's like I'm playing my hand of cards the best that I can, but I got dealt a crappy hand, and I'm a victim of my circumstances. That's where the majority of humanity is level 1. Level 2 is called goal oriented. This is where you start to set the goals, and you're like, oh, you know what? The reason that I'm not making any money is because I haven't taken responsibility for creating wealth in my life. I'm still blaming it on my boss. I'm still blaming it on my spouse. I'm blaming it on my parents. It's nobody else's fault. It's my responsibility. So I'm going to change this by making a new decision and getting my clarity on where I'm going, getting my vision and focusing on that and taking the actions towards it until that manifests. So That's level 2, the goal oriented. It's all about success. But then what you realize, no matter how many goals you reach, at some point you're going to realize there's nothing there, because we're leaving what is real in the pursuit of what appears to be. You're going without because you didn't go within. And so level 3 is, it's about going within, so in that you pop out. and it's called journey oriented. This is real when you realize it's not about the destination, it's about the journey. Everything that you thought you were going to get at the end of the road, it's like the Wizard of Oz. It's like it's a scam. There's nothing there. But if you will just realize that it was all about the journey, it had nothing to do with the destination, because you don't go to a movie to watch the final scene. You don't listen to a song just to hear the final note. You're to take the whole thing in. So what happens in level 3, you move into the present moment and you receive the whole journey in an instant, all of eternity in a moment. And so you move into this formless love, because you've left the form. You're no longer, this is where people would, like, if you talk about like Buddhism and enlightenment, level 3, that's what that is. You're leaving the form, and now you've merged with everything for all of eternity. You're in the formless love. Level 4 is then called value oriented. So you're going to move back into the form. So now you're bringing the formless love with you, and now you're in this form. So you're standing back in the limited perspective, the separate self. Now that separate self doesn't exist, yet you're playing inside of it. It's like you're in the world but not of it.
Mm-hmm.
So you're standing inside of it, but you're not trying to get anything from this world anymore. You're not setting goals. So once I do this, once you build this business and make this much money, and I get that house, or I get that spouse, there's none of that anymore. Because now that's in giving that we receive, but you've already got everything. You realized in level 3 that everything you've been looking for, it was within you the whole time. And so you found the source. And now in level 4, you just start to overflow, and you start to pour everything. It's like you've got a unique self that you're pouring through. It's like a light goes into a prism, it comes out as a rainbow. So in level 3, you return to the light. In level 4, you're coming back out as one of the colors of the rainbow. And so you're a unique color that's different from the other colors, but there's only the one light. So you're delivering that light in your specific color in level 4. And it's just about providing value, not to get anything. But then you're like, well, what else could there be? Why, that's got to be about it then. Well, the problem with level 4 is you can't see the picture when you're inside of it. So now you're perceiving reality from one of the colors when you're in level 4. And the problem with that is, imagine, let's just say, just a scenario, if you saw somebody standing on side of a cliff and looks like they're falling, and you're like, oh, I'm just going to go help this person, and you go pull them back, not try to get any accolades, not for any, wow, you're so great. It was just you were just serving in that moment. But then when you pull the person back and you're like, all right, great, I helped the person out, but then they're like, what did you just do? I'm like, well, what do you mean? I just helped you. And then you look down and there's somebody falling. The person that you thought you were saving was actually saving somebody else. And now the other person is falling because you thought that you were helping, but you weren't actually helping. You were hurting because you had a limited perspective. So level 5 is the not my will, but thine be done, where you're now in the limited perspective. You're carrying around the remembrance of the oneness, but you're in the limited perspective. You're in the one color of the rainbow. But now it's like the GPS system taps in. And this is, you were talked about it earlier. You talked about that still small voice. So level 5 is you're listening. You're the world's greatest follower. And because you're really the world's greatest follower, you're the world's greatest leader, because a lot of people run around trying to be a leader, but they're not following. And that means you're a hypocrite. So the greater you can be at following, the greater you can be at leading, because now the whole thing's complete. So level 5, not my will, but thine be done. You start to listen and you just take the steps. You're not, because you're whole and complete. You're not trying to get anything anymore. You're just being of service of love. And so you asked me the question, why Costa Rica? And the reason Costa Rica is because not my will, but thine be done. I'm just sitting there. Hey, what would you have me do next? Love, what would you have me do here? And love says, go to Costa Rica and start building villages. And that's why I'm here. Now, on the hindsight 2020, now I can see, because I didn't understand why Costa Rica, but now I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh, it makes perfect sense why Costa Rica. I mean, there's food everywhere, there's water everywhere, there's perfect weather all year round. It never changes. It's like perfect, like 75 to 85 degrees every single day, all year round. We got ocean right down the road. We got mountains everywhere, waterfalls. It's perfect. It's the Garden of Eden. But another aspect of it is that, the world is really we're getting on the brink of nuclear war right now. Even nuclear war wouldn't affect this, but there's because where we are from the equator, all the nuclear fallout would stay up north. It wouldn't come down into here. So that's just another reason. But 5% of the biodiversity on the planet is in this one tiny little country. So everything to replenish the entire earth could be birthed right here in this place if there were a complete destruction. But that's none of my business. I'm not preparing for destruction. I'm just here listening and building this beautiful heaven on earth experience from the inside out, because it's already in me. There's heaven's already in me, and now I'm in it.
The website, by the way, for folks, if they would like to get their copy, and there are several different versions. There is actually an Audible version through YouTube, as well as a PDF that you can check out. Go to findyourpurposeebook.com. That's findyourpurposeebook.com.
Just book, not ebook, just findyourpurposebook.com.
Okay. I'm taking that E off of purpose. Okay. That's a silent E. So findyourpurposebook.com. Findyourpurposebook.com as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan with Jonathan England, all the way from Costa Rica. And this is really fascinating because, first of all, you made reference to on the brink of nuclear war, and I've noticed, if I'm looking at my globe correctly and remembering my geography, I don't think there is a country below the equator that is a nuclear power, which I find rather interesting. It's all in the northern hemisphere,
I've never thought about that, never looked at it, but that's a possible.
Yeah, I'll have to.
That's reality.
I'll have to. And it's very interesting. Why? What in the world is that all about? But I wanted to talk to you more about not only these 5 steps, but also how you came to this place that you are in now, not just in Costa Rica, but the mind, and I guess I need to add the heart set, the mindset and the heart set, if you will, of your life, because it looks like you've been through, I guess we could say you've been through the ringer in your life.
Yeah.
Tell us that story of how all of this began for you. Not so much on such and such a date, Jonathan England was born. Let's go forward from there, where you began to live a life that is totally opposite of what you're living now.
So when I was 12 years old, I had an older brother. He was 16 and he died. Now I knew that was going to happen because he had muscular dystrophy, which is a terminal disease. But it's like I'd been preparing for that moment. But at 12 years old, like, you can't really prepare for the death of your brother, but I was preparing in the wrong way. I was preparing as if it was a bad thing, and I've got to deal with this. And I was my brother's hero, and that's what I was developed as by the family unit, right? And I was subconsciously thinking, if I could save my brother, I can save my family, because my parents got divorced because they just couldn't deal with my brother dying, and it was just too much. So if I could save my brother, I could save my family, but I didn't save my brother, which means I didn't save my family, and I became very hopeless, and I'm like, there's no point in it all. And from that moment, moving into this spiral, into the darkness, this hopelessness, I failed love. I failed, I don't even have a purpose for existence. I don't even matter. Nothing matters. Well, with those beliefs, I've manifested quite a reality where I became a broke, ignorant, blackout, drunk, atheist, beach bum. And whenever it's time to get a lesson, it starts out as a feather stroke. If you don't get the lesson, and change your direction, then it comes as a nudge. If you still don't get it, then you get the shove. If you still don't get it, then the 2x4, and then the cosmic 2x4 with the spikes in it. And so I was a pretty stubborn guy. And so it took me multiple 2x4s before one night I was driving blackout drunk. I was literally blackout drunk like 6 nights a week, not just drunk, but blackout. And that was, and so one night I was driving blackout drunk, didn't know that I was driving until I rear-ended a car at a stoplight. And I came to, I'm like, where am I? What just happened? I'm like, oh shit, I'm driving. And I'm like, I got to get out of here. I threw my truck in reverse, tried to run, but there was a cop sitting at the stoplight that I just rear-ended the car at. And so I got about a half a mile down the road trying to outrun the cop. I'm like, I'm not going to be able to get away. So I just pulled over in a Walmart parking lot and they took me to jail. So there I am sitting in jail, sobering up, and I can no longer run. I can no longer hide. And most importantly, I can no longer numb. And I have to feel all my feelings fully. All the shame that I've been running away from, all the pain I've been running away from. And I'm sitting in there in jail and like, John, you could have killed somebody. Now, nobody got hurt, but they could have. It very easily could have, because I had a friend who was drunk driving and T-boned a car at that exact same stoplight and killed somebody, and he went to prison. So it was the exact same thing, exact same scenario, a different reality, but why? I don't know. So I'm sitting in jail thinking like, you could have killed somebody. And then I'm like, yes, I know. Stop beating me up. I'm already beating myself up enough. And like the voice just like, yo, you could have killed someone. I'm like, yes, I know. And then, but I noticed the voice was trying to tell me something else. I'm like, all right, what are you saying? Why do you keep hammering this into me? And it says, John, you realize one of your actions could hurt somebody, right? I'm like, yes. Well, that means another one of your actions could do what, John? I'm like, could help somebody. Okay, so if your action can hurt somebody or help somebody, that means your actions matter, correct? I'm like, yes. And if your actions matter, that means you matter, right? Okay, yes. And then, so if you matter, maybe life isn't meaningless. And then I'm like, oh. So in that moment, what shifted is I went from the identity of someone who doesn't matter to someone who does matter. And someone who does matter is going to actually think about their decisions, make conscious decisions. And I just consciously I made a first conscious decision that moment. I said, never again will one of my actions hurt somebody. From this moment forward, every one of my actions are going to help people. And that was the moment that everything changed. Now, everything changed on the inside. There was still the outside that had to, be cleansed on all the actions that had to come from it. Faith without works is dead. So it was the faith. I shifted my perspective. And now I've got to follow up what I just made the decision. I have to commit to the decision that I just made and start cleaning up my ways. And that's when everything altered. And I started to, what I just described to you was going from level 1 to level 2. So I went into goal oriented. I set a goal that I'm only going to help people from this moment forward. I didn't know how to do that yet, but I knew what I was going to do. And then I started developing the how. And that's what level 2 was all about.
Jonathan England is our guest, and we are talking about the work that he is doing through EarthWake, which is a village. It's a self-sustaining village down in Costa Rica. And you're listening to Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host. And If I Die Before I Wake, when did that come about? How long after all of this, or even how long before you started EarthWake? Did you write this book? Did this information need to be presented to the public? And I might add, as you have basically made it available for free.
Yeah, so the book came before EarthWaking, the EarthWaking movement. But it was, no, EarthWaking movement, and then the book came out of it, actually. Yes. So, because what the book is the 5 levels. It's the journey through the 5 levels, but there's 3 parts to it: the path, the proof, and the process. 3 parts to the book: the path, the proof, and the process. Part 1, the path, that's the roadmap. So I'm distinguishing the 5 levels so you'll understand it, so you can see where you are in the perspective, like which one you're in, and so you'll understand where you're going next and where you just came from. And like when people read it, I'm like, oh God, I can see that's why I was doing what I was doing. That's why I'm doing what I'm doing right now. Oh, and that's why I couldn't move forward, because I thought this was moving forward, but that would actually be moving backwards. And now I can see where forward is. And so part 2 is the proof, which is my journey through the 5 levels. My stories, just what I just shared, it was like a little piece of it. And then the part 3 is called the process, which are the tools I always say there's only one way to learn, it's through failure, but the caveat is it doesn't have to be your failure. So I share with you, here's what don't do, and here's what to do. Here's the recipes for transcendence, for ending the trance of each level. But when I got to level 5, again, it's the not my will but thine be done. Then that's when I still didn't even know about the levels until I was in level 5, and then that's when the surrender, it starts to speak through me. And I'm like, I was driving one day across the country, and I had my notebook next to me, and my hand just opened up the book and started writing 5 levels of consciousness. And I'm like, well, what's that all about? and it's like, and then I'm starting to have a conversation. Kind of like, have you ever read the book Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh?
Oh, yes. Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
so it's very similar. That I'm having a conversation with God, and God's like, okay, and I'm asking the questions. Well, what are these 5 levels? And he's like, remember this moment to this moment in your life? I'm like, yeah. He's like, that's level 1. I'm like, oh. He's like, start to distinguish what was going on, what was different from this part of your life to this part, this chapter to this chapter. I'm like, okay. And so that's how it started to come about. But I didn't. I knew I was supposed to write the book, but I was like just kind of resisting it until one day I heard God speak and say, "Hey, you're gonna do a fast now." I'm like, "What's a fast?" I'd never even known what a fast was. I was a pretty naive, ignorant dude back in the day, and it's like you don't eat. I'm like, well, what do you mean I don't eat? Well, how long? And so I knew that I was supposed to not eat for 40 days, and the book was written while I was fasting for those 40 days.
So there's a certain element of divine intervention, shall we say, in writing of this book. But I would venture that, as you have described it, we're not talking about Holy Writ here. We are talking about an experience that you have had and obviously continue to have with, and again, choose your words, whichever one you want, the Creator, God, the Father, divine, what have you. And a lot of people don't have that. You know, I mentioned at the front end of the program about the decade of perfect vision, the 2020s, where we ask people to go within to that quiet, still, peaceful, calm place and listen to that still, small voice. It sounds to me like, and as you said, for 40 days, which is rather interesting also. Do you find something rather auspicious about the fact that it was 40 days? Because you see that throughout the Bible, whether it's Noah's Ark was on the waters for 40 days. Jesus was in the desert, I believe, for 40 days. That's rather extraordinary in that respect. I always find those patterns interesting.
Oh, well, it was very interesting to me because I was arguing, and I didn't. At that point, I hadn't read the Bible. I didn't know anything about anything, and I'm just listening. I'm doing what I'm told, and then with the 40 days, I'm like, you know what? I'm not gonna not eat for 40 days. That's impossible. I'll tell you what I'm gonna do. Yeah, that book I'm supposed to write, I'm gonna write that book, and when I'm done, then I'm gonna eat. Now that was my agreement. That wasn't God's agreement. God's
Yeah.
like, so I'm like, all right. And I sat down. That whole book came out of me in 2 weeks. I'm like, all right, I get to eat. And God's like, no, you don't. And so when you go a long time without eating, so I was during the winter when I was doing this fast, and I wasn't creating any body heat because I didn't have any food. So I was really cold all the time. And every day I would sit in a tub, like, and just like turn the hot water on and just lay there in the hot water just so I could have some body heat. But I would also listen. There was a Wayne Dyer meditation. It was the I am that I am meditation. And I would sit in the tub and just listen to that. And then one day I was doing that, and I was about like on probably like day 20 or so of my fast. No, it was like 18 or something like that. And it's like I left my body, and it was like the ghost of Christmas past took me out of my body and took me into the past. But it only took me to really positive experiences in my life. And I went through all these experiences, and I was literally there. I wasn't in the tub anymore. I was literally in all these moments, and I was standing there watching these moments all over again. And then I get back into my body. I'm like, so wow, that was extraordinary. That was incredible. And I was so happy, but only for a moment. And then all of a sudden I started to get really sad. and it was like this little bitter sweet, the sweet and then the bitter came in. And I was really sad because I was just thinking about, I didn't even remember any of those moments. They're all gone. Like I haven't even thought about any of those. And a lot of those people I'm never even going to see again. So it's like, what the hell is the point of it all? It just seems like it's just a waste. It seems like worthless. It seems purposeless to even have these experiences. I'm never even going to think of them ever again. It just seems pointless. And I'm like, God, I need to know why I'm here on this planet. I got to know what's the point of it all. What's my purpose? And like what's this all about? And literally I say this, so I'm back in my body, I'm here, everything's back. And as soon as I asked the question, suddenly the video, because I had it on my computer, on YouTube, the I Am That I Am meditation, it suddenly stops and it shifts to a completely new video. Like, and I look over, I'm like, what just happened? And the video was called the Moses Code. And I'm like, what is this? And it starts talking about it starts talking about your life's purpose. Have you ever thought about what's your purpose for being here? I'm like, that's exactly what I just asked. And there's like a person on the computer literally answering the question. And then they go on and they start talking about the Bible, and they start talking about all these stories about people fasting for 40 days. And I'm like, and I'm still questioning that. Do I really have to go 40 days? And now these people are talking about fasting for 40 days right here on my computer next to me, and this person is looking right at me in the computer, looking in there. Why 40 days? Why 40 days? They're literally saying this, and I'm like, that's what I'm saying. Why 40 days? And then they say, because it takes 40 days for transformation. I'm like, I guess I got to do 40 days then. I'm like, I can't deny that answer. Oh, I don't know if I said this a moment ago, but I said, I need, it can't just be a voice inside of my head. When I said it, I said, I need to know why I'm here, what my purpose is. And it can't just be a voice inside of my head. And then it was a voice outside of my head saying, it was the exact voice in my head, but it was outside of me. Now it was answering the questions exactly, but it was outside of my head, because ask and you shall receive. And it sure happened.
Here. Yeah. And also be careful what you ask for sometimes, because it will manifest, maybe not the way you think. And that's always been fascinating to me. We're talking with Jonathan England. We're talking about his village down in Costa Rica, EarthWake. And we're talking about his book, If I Die Before I Wake. And I think that the word wake is the key there. And as you said before, not because you're asleep, but in terms of waking up. By the way, I absolutely abhor the I don't want to say mistranslation, but the misinterpretation of the word that is sweeping this country on one side of the political aisle specifically, and that is the word woke. What the heck does that? Matter of fact, that's the other thing too, is that people who are quote unquote woke, if they are accused of being such, they're going, what are you talking about? I'm just aware of certain things that I need to be doing. And that's where you are. You're not woke. You are aware. You are awake. Okay, we'll put it that way. And that's extremely important for each one of us to sort of grapple with as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story. Grappling with the strange and unusual questions that come to mind, and the answers that we get. Jonathan England has been asking those questions. I have to say, Jonathan, I've been a fortunate individual. And I only say fortunate because I guess from an early age, especially when it came to post-high school, I've been in the right place at the right time. Or at least that's how it seems to me. The synchronicity is another word I could use. And I have to believe that in your life, from the moment of making the decision between hurting people and helping people, you began to be led into those situations where, okay, Jonathan, are you serious? It's time to help people. Do you remember that first instance?
Well, I was on. You asked me the question. I was already on another track. So
go wherever you want to go. Go wherever you want to go.
I was going to say, and then I can come back to that
Sure.
question.
Sure.
Because you were talking about I was led, but it was from that moment when I made the decision. But what's wild is I was led the entire time before, because looking back, I could see that I was a pawn being moved around. I thought I was in control of my life. I thought I was the one driving until I look back once I did make that decision. I can look back and see every moment was perfectly lined up to prepare me for that moment, which was to prepare me for all the moments coming forward.
Mm-hmm.
One specific moment, I've already discussed this moment with you, which I said earlier, every moment is a gift. Every moment is a gift from God, even the moments that you don't like, especially the moments that you don't like. But you don't receive the moment because you're not present in that moment. You're not present to the present that the present is, because you're in resistance to reality.
Mm-hmm.
And so the moment that was the hardest one for me was when I was 12 years old and my brother died. But that moment had the greatest gift for me. And what happened is when I went into that room, my mom told me to tell my brother that it's okay to die. And she said, he's suffering and he's only hanging on for us. And he just needs you to tell him it's okay. And so as a 12-year-old kid, I'm going in there like, okay, it's my job, my duty. I've got to go tell him it's okay so he can be okay. But I'm not okay. So I have to figure out a way to be okay, which the only way I could do that was to lie. Now, I didn't know that I was lying, but that's what was happening. I lied to myself and I disconnected from my feelings. And like that moment, I became this robot where my feelings just didn't matter. I just shoved them down. And here I am just doing my duty. And I tell my brother, like, the last thing I say to him is, Matthew, it's okay to die. And he said something back to me. Now, it's okay to die is the truth. That's the truth. But the way that I said it, I didn't believe it, because I said earlier, life is an 18-inch journey from the head to the heart, from the mind through the emotions to the heart. It's from your truth through reality to the truth. So you have to face reality to experience the truth. So I wasn't facing the reality of the pain that was in me when I said my truth, which was it's okay to die. That's the truth, but I wasn't coming from the truth when I said it. It wasn't okay. So I was lying. But Matthew told me the truth. His last words to me were the truth. But I couldn't hear, I heard the words, but I had no clue what he said until 20 years later. And his last words, when I said, Matthew, it's okay to die, his last words to me were, John, I'm not dying, I'm waking up. He said, this life is just a dream, and I'm waking up from the dream. I've been in this body. I can't play like a kid. I can't run. Haven't been able to run and play my whole life. I'm about to be no longer in this body. I'm going home. I'm waking up and I'm going to be free and I'm going to be able to play again. Now that was the truth, but I couldn't hear it because I thought this body was more real than real. Like
Mm-hmm.
I thought time was more real than eternity. But now, as you talk about, like, the whole thing is EarthWaking. You specifically honed in on. It seems like the word waking, awake. That's where it all hinges on. Well, it does, and that was the moment that I understood what it meant. Because the name of my book is "If I Die Before I Wake." Matthew was already awake before he died. He knew the dream. Or he knew this life was a dream. So he was awake, and then he died in truth instead of the opposite, right? So he didn't die in the dream. You know, the secret of life is to die before you die. It's dying to the false self, the separate self, letting that thing die and realizing that you're not disconnected from love. You're not disconnected from source. You're not disconnected from God. You're one with love. You're one with God. You always have been. You always will be. And that's the truth that we left in our own perception, but it never happened, only in an illusion.
Yeah.
So,
and of course, that goes back to that whole concept that we've discussed of perception. And the filters that we run, what we see, hear, smell, taste, feel, we run that through all of those filters, and then we make judgments. It's one of the things that I have, and I'm guilty as just as anybody else, because I'm also in a human body, where you'll hear a news story, you'll get a breaking news, this and that and the other thing is happening, and you'll pass judgment. You'll come to a conclusion as this particular breaking news is happening. But as time goes on, more information is gathered and more information is gathered and more information is gathered. And you're going, oh, I didn't know that. I was totally unaware that da 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 da. And now you've got to change your perception of what you thought happened. But unfortunately, there are people in this world, and we're seeing it constantly in this country, where when they're presented with new information about a particular event, there are some who will go, "Oh, I hadn't looked at it that way." But then there are others who go, so what?
Yeah.
I still hold the same. And I love this, and I'm not going on this as a tangent per se to discuss the subject, but this one reporter was walking around the city, this one particular city, could have been New York or Chicago, what have you, talking with people, and primarily people of a particular political persuasion, asking them if God was pro-life. And oh yeah, God is pro-life. Yeah, okay. And the reporter would say, yeah, God is pro-life, except maybe for the times when he killed all the humans except for Noah and his family and all the animals. God was pro-life except for that one. And then also the time when he wiped out this particular tribe for the Israelites in the Old Testament, and so on and so on. And he would just start. And so the person standing there could not even respond. They couldn't respond because to them, the information that they were being given, which was accurate according to what we'll find in the Old Testament, that's what God did. He flooded the earth for, as I said earlier, 40 days and wiped everybody out, except for the people on the ark, which also raises another interesting question about the how we have over 8 billion people on the planet. Initially, it was Adam and Eve. And then we got to a certain population. I don't know what it was. Then God wiped them all out. And now all you had was Noah's family. So in addition to not quite being pro-life, is God in favor of incest? I don't know. It's a question. It's only a question, ladies and gentlemen. That's all I'm putting out there. But it goes to show that people have made these conclusions based upon what they have been told. How about you? A wonderful Christian musician who I got to know fairly well, John Fisher is his name. And I was interviewing him, and he was living up in New England, and shared this story of how he sat at his lonely writer's garret, if you will, writing songs, looking out the window at the leaves falling, and a thought hit him. And I put this question to you. He said, is what I believe what I was taught to believe, because he grew up in the Jesus movement in California, or is it what I believe? Is there a way to truly differentiate? Have we really come to independent beliefs, independent of outside sources, or are we always influenced by the beliefs from our parents, from our teachers, from the ministers, the pastors, the rabbis, the priests, et cetera, et cetera? Your thoughts?
We're carrying around the programming of the collective from our teachers, preachers, friends, family, media, and government, and then we're filtering reality based upon that subconscious programming that we didn't even choose consciously. But you can actually start to find your way through it. Find your way through what was just a programming, what's just a regurgitation. There's a couple different things that are important in this. One, how you can do this is you'll know them by their fruit. So you face reality. Okay, is this perfect example? I used to be told by everybody, if I want to make more money, I got to work harder and I got to work longer. And I worked really hard and I worked really long and I was still broke. My parents that I learned this from worked really hard and really long and they were broke. So, well, is that true? Is that accurate? If the people that are saying this don't have the fruits, there's got to be something off. So you start looking at the fruits, and then you're saying, okay, if because you're following a recipe, like this plus this equals that, well, if you keep doing this plus this and it equals something else, there has to be something off in your recipe. If you're trying to make a fluffy cake, but you keep getting flan, then there's something off with your recipe. So, and you have to face that. You have to be face to face with, okay, what I'm doing isn't working. But you don't judge that. You just like, it's not working. So you discern it. This isn't working. And that's what most people are conflating, judgment and discernment. They don't have the two separated. They haven't discerned discernment. So they think it's the same thing. Like you can't say, hey, what you're doing isn't working. That makes them feel bad about themselves, right? So you don't say that. Well, that's, that it's okay for somebody to feel bad. Like we're not here to feel happy. We're here to feel fully. And if you're feeling bad, somebody can't make you feel bad. What they can do is they can poke the button of the bad that's in you and bring it to the surface. So, but speaking to our assumptions of what we believe to be true is true for us, but is it actually the truth? One of the things that was really difficult for me to deal with, it popped up when you were talking earlier about the floods. It was really difficult. One of the reasons I was an evangelist atheist, like it was my job to convince people God wasn't real, it's because when my brother died, I'm sitting here like, all right, either there's something wrong with my family or there's something wrong with God. It has to be one or the other, because we had a shitty life. I mean, my brother died at 16, and it was like, how could he just kill my brother like that if there's a God? So the only way is if there's something wrong with me or something wrong with my whole family, which I don't want to accept that. The other one is there's something wrong with him. Why would he do something like that to us, people that he loves? And so I decided there is no God, and you know them by their fruit. When I believed, I decided life is meaningless, there is no God, and I failed love. And the fruit of that was I became a broke, ignorant, blackout, drunk, atheist beach bum. I didn't like the fruit of that. There's no good, bad, right, or wrong, just what works and doesn't work given what you're trying to accomplish. So the first thing is you got to decide what it is that you're trying to accomplish. If you're trying to accomplish being miserable and suffering, then, hey, this is a great recipe for it. Take on these beliefs. But if you'd like to experience peace, love, joy, freedom, fulfillment, abundance, there's a different set of beliefs, a different set of ingredients. But there's one specific thing that was really, really difficult for me until I got a new context. Just thinking about like the flood, if that was like a real thing, which I see it's coming again. That's what's happening. What we're preparing for right now. But I was talking to one of my friends about a year ago, and she was she like took care of bees. She had a whole bunch of bees that she really loved, many beehives, and she just loved these bees. And then one of her hives, they got sick. They got this virus, and it starts to spread between all the bees. And now she loved all of her bees, but she had to make a decision. Either I don't do anything and these bees infect all of my hives and they all die, or I burn this hive. And I'm like, wow, that's a tough situation right there. Either they all die, or I burn the hive, or either I kill these bees, or all of my bees die. But I love these bees. I can't kill them. How do you make that decision? But she decided to burn the hive. Like, gosh, that's incredible love. Like the depth of love, the unconditional love that it took for you to do that. Because I don't know that I couldn't have done it when I was in my ego. And then I look at that, I'm like, it took me out of my judgment on what I thought about, about certain circumstances, like that you can't be a loving being and do something like that. Well, actually, there's in a different context, you actually could. And so that's what I do now, is I always step out of what perspective that I'm looking for. I always say, if you can't fight for the opposite context, the opposite perspective, then you have no business. It's not, the perspective you're in isn't yours. You don't have it has you. Until you step out of it, and then you can see from the other side, then you can say, oh, well, okay, now you can decide. But if you have not fully understood the other perspective, you haven't decided on yours yet. You're still just regurgitating. You're still just doing part of a programming. So you got to be free to see before you can say. Most people are saying before they saw.
One of the interesting dichotomies I've dealt with over the last few years, and I've finally made peace with it, is this concept of duality. And it sort of goes to what you were just talking about, the good versus the evil, or good versus bad, and so forth. And the analogy is of both the macrocosmic world and the microcosmic world. And if you take a look, let's just say for the sake of argument, take a look out through the James Hubble telescope. You see the universe unfolding, as Desiderata would say, as it should. Things are happening out there. You got supernovas, you've got asteroids crashing into this, comets flying around and doing that. You've got everything's spinning and moving and churning and and you look at it, and we look at that and go, wow, that is so cool. Now you go to the microcosmic world, looking through an electron microscope at living tissue down to the subatomic level, and you kind of see the same thing, spinning things, whirling things. This is consuming that, and and you're going, wow, that's incredible. No judgment whatsoever. It's just, you're in awe. But then you come back to what I call the mid-crow, where we live, and you look at, just for the sake of argument, lions and wildebeests in the plains of Africa somewhere, or even the events that are going on the streets of New York, Washington, Los Angeles, Tokyo, etc., around the world, whatever, Ukraine, whatever you want. And we pass judgment like you would. Oh, that is just awful. That's brutal. That's terrible. And I'm going, wait a minute. How is it that it's different here, but there's no duality, there's no judgment on the grand scale or the micro scale? That doesn't make any sense. It's illogical. Ergo, your example of, for example, the impetus to move down this particular path, you could see, hindsight being what it is, you could see all of the events leading up to that car crash. And then from today, you can also see, from that car crash to where you are today, you can see all of those events and the synchronicity. Ergo, these events, they just are what they are. There's no judgment. The car crash was neither good nor bad. It just was. It was an event. And it opened your eyes, spiritual eyes, if you will, to a certain aspect of life. And I love what you said earlier. We're not here to be happy or suffer. We're not here to feel happiness or sadness, in spite of what our founding fathers wrote about the pursuit of happiness. Isn't that interesting? You get life and liberty, but you have to pursue happiness. It's not a given.
When am I going to get it?
When am I going to get it? And you work hard and you work long, and it's not there. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. And so I want to ask you a question in regards to that particular element of the preamble. Are you happy, or does that really matter? Maybe the better question is, are you living life fully, feeling whatever comes?
Yeah. So the thing that I said earlier was, we're not here to feel happy. We're here to feel fully.
Mm-hmm.
And when you've done that, because all suffering comes from resisting what is, like, it just is. But you're saying, no, it's not that your dog died that you're not happy. It's that you think your dog was not supposed to die is why you're not happy. And so you're placing a judgment on a moment. The moment is inherently meaningless. You assign the meaning to the moment, and then the meaning you assign is, if it's a negative meaning, then you've trapped yourself in that moment. So now your emotion, your energy is no longer in motion. It's trapped in a moment. And so you're dying at that point. But how you return to the energy in motion, you return to the flow, you return to life, is by removing your judgment from that moment. I keep saying it, I've said it a few times already, but every moment is a gift from God, even the moments that you don't like, especially the moments that you like, because nothing is as it appears to be, because we don't see the world as it is. We see the world as we are. So when you're looking in your mirror, when you're judging it, it's only because there's something inside of you. There's a judgment that needs to be released, or you don't release it, and it's just going to take you deeper into the darkness. So I said earlier, so in duality, even duality is an illusion. An artificial creation. Like you were talking about when you look at the macro, like, wow, look at the universes, but some of them just smashing into each. There might have been 10 quadrillion life forms that just got, and you're like, wow, I'm in awe, but you don't think about what that, you don't judge that. But then in this little mid level, you're like not in awe anymore, you're in judgment. But it's, our judgment is artificial. So duality doesn't exist. Love is the only thing that exists. Light, there is, like, darkness is just the absence of light. When you bring light into darkness, what happens to darkness? It goes away. It never existed. When you bring truth into a lie, what happens to the lie? It goes away. It never existed. When you bring love into fear, what happens to fear? It goes away. It never existed. When you bring eternity into time, what happens to time? It goes away. It never even existed. It was just an absence of eternity, which doesn't exist. So to the question of, are you happy? You cannot pursue happiness. We leave what is real in the pursuit of what appears to be. The moment that you chase it is the moment that you lost it, or you perceived yourself of losing it, because being not okay, or wanting to be happy is a negative experience. Being okay with not being happy is a positive experience. Wanting to be happy is a negative experience. Being okay with not being happy is a positive experience. Yeah. So the only reason you don't have happiness is because you assume it isn't already there, because you've placed conditions upon it. I'm only allowed to be happy once these conditions are met. So you go chasing those conditions, trying to put them in place, but there's always going to be more if you're chasing it, because you're coming from lack. You're coming from scarcity, thinking there's an action that you can take to create abundance, but you can't create it because it's all there is. You can't create love. It's because they're all there is. You can't create you can't create truth. You can only create the opposite of it, and you're not actually creating it. You're just creating an illusion of it, and then living inside of an illusion, detached from reality, detached from the truth in your own perspective. You still didn't detach, but only in your perspective did you detach.
And I do get that. So the things that are true, like love and truth and so forth, it's not something you create. It already is. You Correct. Connect to it. You become a part of it, if you will. And the opposite, you can create by putting up those walls, those shields. I love using Star Trek references. You put up your shields, and guess what? You can fire your weapons, but nothing can get in. Nothing. Okay. So now you've created the illusion of truth and the illusion of love and happiness and so on and so on. It's fascinating. We're talking with Jonathan England, and we are here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan, your host, and it is really a pleasure to have Jonathan England again, all the way from Costa Rica. He's got a book called If I Die Before I Wake. I pray my soul you'll take. I can't even remember what that little childhood little prayer that little kids would pray. I don't pray like that anymore. I just say, hey, thank you for all of the experiences that I am having, whether, and like you said, whether I like them. And that, by the way, that liking part is all coming from the ego.
Yep.
So whether I like it or not, thank you, because it is showing me things about myself that I need to learn. I wouldn't be having those experiences if there wasn't something for me to learn. I was talking with a gal yesterday. She's a healer and so forth. And I was sharing with her about some of the issues I'm dealing with high blood sugar and so forth. At one point, I was diagnosed with type 2 diabetes, got rid of it in a month and a half. It's been normal for since 2020, July. I got rid of it in September, mid-September. And it's been normal up until 3 months ago. And I'm going, but I haven't changed anything in my diet. Okay. And as we're talking, she's sharing with me, well, it isn't your diet that's the issue. It's I guess the best way to put it is, it's your attitude. I did read where stress can elevate blood sugar. And in the last 3 months, a whole lot of stuff has been happening. And it started with my father on March 1st when he passed away. Now, I'm grateful for his passing into the next realm, because now he is seeing perfectly, he is hearing perfectly, and he is walking without falling down, which he was diagnosed shortly before his passing with Parkinson's, along with a dementia. But now he's free of all that. And now, instead of just residing in Phoenix, Arizona, my hometown, he's everywhere. And I talk to him and I listen to him and my elder sister, who he was very close to, and she went the year before. So anyway, I'm piling all of these different elements. And I'm going, oh, okay, so I have to find a way to de-stress. I have to find a way to let go of these things that are affecting my physical body. So it goes back to what you were talking about. And I love this phrase, as within, so without, or vice versa. As without, so within. And the physical body is without. So I need to go within. I'm getting bitten by my own words, my friend. And listen to that still small voice, and figure out, okay, what do I need to do? Because I did it once. I got the blood sugar down where it needed to be. So I need to do it again. So I need to find ways of releasing that. And I have a feeling she did something during the interview, because since that interview, my foot has been getting better and better. Blood sugar hadn't gone quite where I've wanted it yet, but I know that it will. And at the same time, I would have to say I'm not necessarily happy, but I am living and feeling fully, regardless of what's happening. And do you get that sense inside of you, regardless of what your emotions are telling your brain, your intellect, your ego, you're still feeling complete, you're still feeling fulfilled, you're still feeling, I am on purpose. I am living my life of purpose.
Yeah, so that's my constant state, but there's blips on the radar where I leave it now. So it's like, and the old world, my old identity, it was like I was always in anxiety and depression, and every now and again I get a blip of some fulfillment, some happiness. Like it was like a blip, right? But my constant state was the opposite. But now it's flipped to where my constant state, I'm always in peace, love, and joy, fulfillment, and purpose. But every now and again I'll start to I can notice. Wait, I'm feeling something other than peace, love, and joy right now. I'm experiencing something other than that, and now I can be hypersensitive. I don't know if hypersensitive is the right word, but it's like I take the feather strokes now. As I said earlier, when it's time to get a lesson, it starts as a feather stroke. If you don't get the feather stroke, then it's the nudge. If you don't do the nudge, then it's the shove, and then it's the 2x4. Well, I used to be, because in my egoic identity, I was, the hard ass, like, give me the 2x4s. Like I was literally saying those before. I'll take the 2x4s. Like, why would I say that? Like now I'm like, I'm like, ooh, that tickles. So I feel a little tickle. Oh, that tickles. Like, okay, I'm listening. I'm present. I'm here. What are you saying? And so I'll notice when I'm experiencing something other than peace, love, and joy. And then I'm like, okay, what are you saying to me? I'm ready to feel fully what it is that I've got some sort of judgment to some moment, some sort of resistance to reality. And what is it? And I'm ready to see it. I'm ready to feel it. I'm ready to deal with it. Don't spend 30 years running away from something you could have dealt with in 30 minutes or 30 days. So I'm ready to deal with anything at any time, when it comes up. When would now be a good time? Well, when it's up. And so to what you were just speaking about, like the diabetes thing, that the body talks. And so it's saying something to you, but there was already a feeling, an emotion that had been suppressed previous to that. And diabetes comes from, it's a lack of sweetness or love in your life. So you can feel like your dad could have been a real source of that in your life. And like, okay, now it's there. If there's like a perceptual missing piece of it missing right now. And so so what your step would be is to really feel that, like really feel like and feel it full. Like, yeah, dad is like, there's a sweetness to his body actually being here. Yes, I know, logically, yes, I can say the words. Like, remember I said earlier, I told my brother it's okay to die, but when I said it, that's the truth, but I was saying it, I hadn't gone through the emotions.
Mm-hmm.
So life is 18 journey from the head to the heart, from the mind through the emotions to the heart. So I hadn't felt it fully yet, because it was like I didn't want to feel that. And once I felt it fully, then I was free. And then I could truly open my heart to the same degree that, like, the expanse, like, he expanded, but I'm talking about his expansion. Like, okay, now he's not in a body anymore and he's expanded, he's everywhere. But I'm talking about it. I'm talking about it in my head.
Mm-hmm.
If I can feel the pain, the resistance, and let myself completely get all that, then I'll drop it in the heart and I'll receive the same expansion that he received.
Mm.
But I've got to feel it fully. So that would be a great thing for you, like really feeling like the both sides,
Yeah.
the greatness, the joy of your dad's life, celebrate his life, but also allow yourself to fully feel, is there any grieving that hasn't been done yet that I can deal with, and really feel it fully. And that's going to open a space. And then there's going to be something that's going to move into there. Like, there's a new relationship on your way.
Mm.
That's it's not going to replace that.
Right.
But it's going to be, it's going to have its essence in it. Like
Right.
that's in it, but it's like you get to receive it in a new way. Uh,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
that's perfect for your next level of your next chapter, for where you're
I
going.
I cannot tell you how much I appreciate what you have said. When someone passes, there's a vacuum that's created because the physical body is no longer here. And so the way I interpret what you're saying is that that vacuum, though it is not intended to be filled to replace my father, it is there to fulfill the future of my life, whatever that might be. And I've had a few interesting, I'll call them crying jags, as it were, over the last a couple of months, thinking about my dad. But I've also talked with my father a lot of times when there are experiences I'm having and I don't really like, my ego doesn't like. And so I'm saying, Dad, what do I do? What do I do? And it's really interesting how not too long after that, I get the answer. And sometimes it's interesting. The answer is just sit still. Just be quiet and sit still. Don't do anything. You're fine. You're doing fine. And so I appreciate what you said, and I had never thought of that before in terms of the diabetic condition and the high blood sugar rate that brings on and so forth, or is a part of that, and getting it back down to normal. And it's like, wait a minute, I had this thing, I thought I had this thing whipped. I got rid of sodas. I haven't had a soda in 3 years. 3 years. I've replaced it with something else that I've researched that says that the sweetener they use in this particular product is processed differently in the body, so it's fine. And of course, I've been drinking them for 3 years with no problem. And so it is interesting how that happens. And it's just fascinating the way that we are able to extrapolate. Talk to me a little bit before we wrap things up here about your inner life, your intuition, and is it your divine self as you interpret it, or is it, um, do you think that it is the divine? Do you think that it is God speaking with you in those times, in that area where you're listening to that still small voice?
So this is actually perfect. I was hearing it actually already before you asked the question.
Someone told me not long ago that when I'm talking to the ethereal world, I need to listen faster, they say. So anyway, go ahead, please.
So you may or may not like this answer. So preferences are programming. Back to the question, the thing we were talking about earlier about uh when we're like right about something and then find out later that we're wrong about it.
Mm-hmm.
Well, but we have a preference, but the preference was the program. If you're ever sitting inside of a preference, it's because you're sitting inside of a program. So the thing is, what I heard uh, is that what is happening right now, the expansiveness of your dad leaving his body, it's making a space, a vacuum, and you're going to level to the same depth of expansiveness. But what you're about to have is a relationship with your father, God the Father. To it, you had it at a time, but somehow it got lost, it got muddied, and it's coming back. It's now, so God is more than just the Father, and you're about to experience a fatherly relationship with God, which is the answer to your question for me. Now, again, I experience God in all aspects, all forms, and all formlessnesses, for all energies, like the God the Mother, God the Son, God the Daughter. But it's who I'm following is God the Father, and it's a guide. He's a guide. He's like keeping me in line, and that's who I'm listening to. And he literally specifically told me that to you is you're going to have a very intimate connection with God the Father, in a way that you once had it, but it's going to be broader, and you went through a journey to prepare you for a purpose that you're going to need that fatherly guidance in order to fulfill it, and that's coming when when you open, when you feel it all fully, and just it's like it's happening. It's happening actually right now, and there'll be a fulfillment of it. I can't hear you for some reason. I don't know if you're muted.
Way I am way open, way open to that. I'm going to keep my thoughts and feelings and so forth just open, and my soul, if you will, the spirit, to that. It's because it's one of those aspects that I do my. I'm not always that successful in staying out of the muck and the mire of these issues, but I learned how to do this back when I was working for this Christian station for 15 years. And the questions that I would ask, the answers didn't make any sense. I mean, what? No, that's illogical. That's totally illogical. It's kind of like that earlier of, is God pro-life? And I got to thinking not long ago about this, and wondering if God is really love, if that is the proper definition or interpretation. And so I started looking at a lot of these different passages, and I got to thinking, well, wait a minute, I am God, I am part of God, but let's keep it simple in the philosophy, if you will. I am one of God's children. And yet there's a passage that said, for God so loved the world, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm thinking, wait a minute. This doesn't make any sense. For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten son, that whosoever shall believe, et cetera, et cetera. I'm going, wait a minute. He created me, or she, or God created me. And if God really loved me, why would he set me up with original sin and all of these things? It's like, I remember in the Old Testament, it says that the sins are passed on to from the father to the son to 7 generations. Well, if there was original sin, then it only goes 7 generations past Adam and Eve. So I have no original sin. But then I got to thinking about my father, my physical father. He loved us, and he tried to give us everything that he felt we needed. Not everything we wanted, but what he felt we needed. And I, father, in the spiritual sense, and think, well, that doesn't make any sense. If I don't comply with certain conditions, then I don't get to be with the Father. So what that tells me is that, based upon the philosophy, the doctrine and dogma, God's an extortionist. And I don't believe that. And so some of these stories that I've been taught and that I've read from the Old and New, they don't make sense. They're illogical. And yet there are people who have spent their entire lives promoting and defending and so on and so forth. And I'm not trying to take anything away from them, but my perception, how about we put it that way? My perception and observation is that they don't make sense. And so now I have to go within and listen to that still small voice and say, what's true? Or not so much what's true. Is this really relevant for my life? Do I really need to go down this particular path? As you talk about the roadmap, these 5 steps, what are your thoughts in that regard? Is the minutia, as I like to call it, of doctrine and dogma of any philosophy really worthy of our soul's time?
Not the minutia of it. The Bible itself says the dead letter killeth. So if you're, and like Jesus said, you Pharisees, you're cleaning the outside of the cup, leaving the inside dirty. The words don't mean anything. Mm-hmm. It's what the words are pointing at. And most people are using the words to score. Like, look, I said the words perfectly. Look, I can say them all perfectly. So I'm a good kid and I get the good grade. But that was only on the surface. You didn't actually go within to what they were pointing to. So this, it's so wild. God's cool.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I was up till 3 a.m. this morning, having almost this same conversation with my wife. It's not exactly the same, but that conversation prepared me to be open to receive what God's about to say to you. Because ask and you shall receive. I'm like seeing everything. It's like it's all like clicking right now. Like all the dots are connecting. I'm seeing why I shared the story of me asking God, hey, I need to know what's the purpose of my life, and it can't just be a voice inside of my head. And then the person on the video starts saying, why 40 days? Why 40 days? Because it takes 40 days for training. And it's literally somebody outside of me saying the answer to the question, because it needed to be outside of me. So like that story was to prepare for this moment. Like all that stuff was prepare for this moment for you, because you've asked and God has heard and you're about to receive. And God has one son. We are all the body of Christ. We're all members of that body. And you have to believe that God loves you so much that he gave his only begotten son. Now that doesn't make sense until you understand the difference between the way the world loves, the way that we've been trying to love, versus the way versus what unconditional love is. And so with love doesn't take prisoners. People do, and they call it love. People will manipulate each other to keep them in an agreement. Now we love each other because we're fulfilling on these agreements with each other. That's not the way God loves. God, arms wide open. You can come and go as you please, but that's not the way that people do it. So there's a phrase that came through me about a month ago. It says, you can't save someone from their own sovereignty. God could, but he won't. We can't, but we try. And that's the difference between love and anti-love. When we're trying to save somebody from their sovereignty, that's because we don't love them. We're calling it love, but it's the exact opposite of love. You're like, no, you can't go do that. You're going to screw yourself up. I mean, people do it with their children all the time, and they wind up driving their children away from them, saying, no, you can't do that. Like, and then you try to imprison them, and they're like, well, I'm going to break free of this prison. But God loves us so much that he gave us up. So we're free to choose. The only thing that exists is love. But if we want to create the experience of something other than love, we're free to choose, and he's going to allow us to go as far as we want with it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I have, one of the things the phrase that you used, arms open wide, made me think of this. Like I said, I like to use Star Trek analogies. This one episode of Next Generation where the captain was on a planet, so to speak, trapped with this other biological being, a biped, and kind of like almost like a lizard creature of sorts. and they were trying to communicate. Now, they were both speaking English, but they were both telling stories, but neither of them understood. And finally, the captain finally started to understand as the other party started to use that phrase, as with his arms open wide. And so Picard eventually got the message. He started to understand the mythology, the analogy, the metaphor. Then he told his story of Gilgamesh, the story of Gilgamesh, in the same way, and trying to use similar terminology to what the other party had just shared. And in a way, that's where we are, as you've sort of described it, is that we're using different languages, different metaphors. Blue is not blue. Blue is what you perceive it to be. Yeah. And if a person's colorblind, then blue is not blue. And again, through the filters of our lives. One thing that you said earlier, I love, because both you and I, from the day we were born, all of our choices that we have made, I'd like to believe that we have that aspect of free will. And this is one of the wildest thoughts that I had some months ago when I started verbalizing this. All of the choices you and I have made have brought us right here, right now, talking with each other. Now, if that's not synchronicity, I don't know what is. You went through your experiences. I went through my experiences, and somehow the universe said, okay, on this date, around this time, these two are going to come together and they're going to have one awesome conversation, which we've had. And I want to thank you so much for being a part of this program and what we're doing to try to, as you say, change the world for everybody. Nobody's left out.
Yeah. Gosh, you're really inspiring really great things coming out of me right now. I didn't see it coming. There's two specific things. Earlier you said you were talking about love is just there and you can connect with it or not, but you actually can't connect with it. The only thing you're in control of is disconnecting from it. Because we're not in control of love, because that's all there is. We're only in control of what love isn't, which doesn't exist. So when we want to be in control, great. The only thing you're in control of is your suffering, your smallness. So all you got to, when you just stop controlling, then you're just love. That's all there is. So here's this is a phrase that I just heard, because the answer to that God just spoke a moment ago about God's only got one begotten son and we are the body of Christ. So here's the phrase for me to say and you to say, if you feel called to really understand what that first, what he was saying. This is a way that we can actually receive it and hear it. Is that God only has one begotten son. I am God's son, and God loved me so much he let me go.
Oh, wow. Wow. He let me go.
God loved me
he
so
loved
much.
Me so much that he let me go.
I have to believe that God loved me so much that he let me go. God has one son and he gave his son. And if I believe that, then I return home only to realize that I never left. But I am God's son and he loved me so much he let me go.
We are the ones who have put up the illusion, the barrier, that which creates the shadow, the darkness. We're the ones that do that. Oh, wow. I'll play that one back and maybe even put it into I may put that on my lock screen quote. I may put that on my lock screen on my phone just so I see it every time I unlock my phone. We're talking with Jonathan England, and I'm Richard Dugan, and you are listening to Tell Me Your Story. If I Die Before I Wake is the title of the free book. It's both audio as well as PDF, and you can go to his website to pick up your free copy. And the website is findyourpurposebook.com. com, findyourpurposebook.com. We're going to be linked to that website, Jonathan, so people can go there and get more information, as well as find out about the work that you're doing there at EarthWake University as well. I find that interesting. You have the village and you have a university. Now, is that a more of an online thing, or do you have like a physical brick and mortar where people can go and they study different things?
So it started actually as the university. Like in the United States, in Florida. I had a building, and what we teach in our university are health, wealth, happiness, relationships, and spiritual connection. Because those are the 5 things that really matter to people, yet the 5 things you learn nothing about in school.
Yeah.
So that's what it's all around those. And there's, so let's say there's the 5 primary, but those go with the 5 levels of consciousness. Level 1, the lesson is health, which is taking responsibility for your body. Level 2, the lesson is wealth, taking responsibility for your external environment. Level 3, the lesson is happiness, taking responsibility for your internal environment, your thoughts and your feelings. Level 4 is relationships, taking responsibility for your connection and contribution to others. Relationships aren't a place you go to get, they're a place you go to give. And then level 5 is spiritual connection, taking responsibility for your connection and contribution to the infinite, to the source. So now they're in those 5. Again, those are 5 colors, the rainbow, that can be infinite amounts of variations of those colors in the midst of it. So each person, another difference between this educational system and the old world one is, in the old world, you'll go learn business from a guy who's never built a business. It's so they're missing the subtle nuances. They don't have the fruit. They're just regurgitating words, and then you go regurgitate the words and like, why isn't it working for me? Well, because it wasn't about the words. It was about something that was inside of the words that those people were missing. That's why they were, so in the new education, you don't talk what you haven't walked.
Right.
And so you actually have the journey. You have wisdom, because wisdom comes from walking a journey. So I was here and now I'm here, and here's the recipe for it. And so if you're here and you want to get there, I can help you. If you're not here or somewhere along here and wanting to get here, then there's no point in you listening to me right now. So it makes it very clear, and you can actually get the results. So, but it started as the university, but actually started, it was my journey, which just going to personal development events. Like, I invested over $500,000 in my own personal development now. But what was happening is I'd go to one of these events, like Tony Robbins or something. I'm like, wow, this is incredible. This is amazing. Everybody's like so inspired and in love and connected. And like, this is amazing. This is the way life should be. But then you leave and you got to go back to the old world where everybody's running around, or not running around. They're just dying around. They're like zombies. And then they like get like, there's something wrong with you for being inspired, for having goals, for dreaming. And so I'm like, what if I don't want to leave anymore? What if I didn't have to leave? What if that I could just be around the people that are making this kind of decision that they want to move forward in life and be creators instead of consumers? What if I didn't have to leave? So that was actually the vision for the village. So there's a university in the village. So you come and you learn, but you don't have to leave. You don't have to go back into the old world with a bunch of people that don't care, that are consumers. You can actually hang out and live with creators. So that's how the whole thing was birthed.
Wow. Well, I have 3 final questions that I do ask all of my guests at the end of every program. I should say after every conversation. And I'm going to ask those of you. But first, I want to thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. New paradigms for a new world, where we are giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. We are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., and Wednesdays at 9 a.m. for a special edition of Tell Me Your Story. We stream live at those times at richarddugan.com. Our podcasts are on SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music, and many other locations across the internet. And we're on YouTube, where you can listen to and watch these conversations. We hope that you'll subscribe, but at the very least, click notifications so that you'll be notified when a new conversation is posted. And I try to get them up as quickly as I can, and I hope that you folks are truly enjoying them. I know you are, because we're almost hitting 98,000 listens since January 2018, and That's pretty good, I think. But then again, the numbers are not really relevant. It's the fact that there are those of you who are listening and enjoying these programs, and I'm hoping you're getting something out of them as well. We also ask that if you can support the work we're doing, we do have a PayPal account. Is for your security as well as ours. And when you go to send a contribution, a donation, whatever the case may be, of any amount, they ask you for an email address. That email address is richard@richarddugan.com. Again, richard@richarddugan.com. I made it real easy. And then, as I've said throughout the program, please participate in the Decade of Perfect Vision, the 2020s, where we ask you to spend some time. I'm asking myself to spend more time going within and sitting quietly and listening to that still small voice. And it does not have to take long. One of our guests basically said, even if it's just 60 seconds, that will grow into 2 minutes and 4 and 8. And you never know where that's going to lead you, not only in terms of that time, but also in terms of your life's purpose. So we hope that you will do that. With all of that said, we have the final 3 questions. And the first of those 3 is, who is Jonathan England?
I am the extension of love and form.
What is your life's purpose?
To birth heaven on earth.
And what was your best day?
Right now.
Well, Jonathan, again, I thank you so much. I encourage people to go to your website, findyourpurposebook.com. And I hope to get together with you again for another conversation about all of this. It's been not only enlightening, I'm sure, for the listeners, but very much so for me. I'll have to go back and listen again to the words because I've said it before and I will say it again. Words have power. And in order for them to have power, we've got to speak them. It's great to utter them in the head, but I think that you really need to verbalize them. So again, I thank you again for joining us.
All right. Thank you for having me.
And I thank you for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. Until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love to Lal. Jeanette, I am listening. And Dad, and now this sounds kind of strange, Dad, be happy.